It's the Brad and John Show.
It is the Brad and John Show. This is C Block. The date today is January 16th, 2025. And you know what? Before I go any further, John, I have to make a quick phone call here. Will you let me do just one of this?
Oh, yeah, please do.
And by the way, our billboard's now been shown about 50 times. Quick phone call. Hopefully this person will answer right away.
Hi.
Hey, you're on the air, and I just wanted to call you, okay? So don't say anything bad. I'll talk to you later, okay?
Okay.
Bye. Okay, John, I have to make another phone call. Hold on, let me say it. 8835. Let me do this phone call real quick. Please don't be upset with me. I have to make this phone call real quick.
Hello?
Hey, I just wanted to call and tell you that you're on the air. Is that okay?
It's okay.
Okay, I'll talk to you later. Bye. Okay, and I have to make one more phone call here. Okay, and do this one more phone call here. Okay.
Hello?
Hey, I just wanted to tell you you're on the air one more time. Is that okay?
That's okay.
Okay, bye. I was simulating how that is Shelley Barr, how Shelley Barr communicates with people on the phone. If you don't answer the phone the first time, the second time, the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time, the sixth time, the seventh time, she calls you 8 times. I'm sorry. I'm making fun of Shelley.
Why does she do that?
I don't know. See,
Does she think that it takes – now, in her defense, does it maybe take the folks she's friends with? Is she friends with a lot of older folks and it takes them longer to answer? You know, like in the old days, it might take your grandma a long time to get up off the couch and walk to the
you had to walk into the kitchen to pick up the wall phone.
And get the phone on the cord. Is that like a vestige from that era?
You had to go into the bedroom and pick up the princess phone off the nightstand, that kind of stuff. So.
And Brad, I know the answer to this, but we don't need to rehash this. But I don't know when my phone rings because my ringer's off.
Well, see, I don't do that because of the fact that your ringer's off on your cell phone?
Yeah.
Okay, well, the problem I have with that is that I leave my ringer on all the time because of the fact that, once again, I'm on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with the alarm company.
That's true. We've been over it several times. That's why I hesitated to even bring it up.
Right.
You were going to mention Bob Kuban, Brad.
Okay, first off, I'll tell the Bob Kuban story second. First off, have you by any chance taken a look at this interview that the Washington Post did with Jill Biden?
No, I haven't.
Man, I tell you what.
I was too busy mentally preparing for Joe's farewell speech last night.
Was that a dinger or what?
Oh, it was amazing.
Okay. If I have my family, I'm not married anymore. If I have my family and I have a daughter and 3 sons and I don't have a wife anymore, I have an ex-wife who, quite honestly, her and I get along very well. But at some point in time, if I am not able to do my job, run the radio station, essentially get up in the morning, take a shower, find food to eat, I hope that someone will come along and say, Brad, you know what? I think it's time for you to just change your life. I think it's time for you to step aside. And if you read this interview with Jill Biden in the Post, it's spooky because either she is absolutely, positively, totally delusional. There's one of 3 aspects of this. She is absolutely, positively, totally delusional. That's number 1. Number 2 is she is, getting brain dead. And the third one is she is just absolutely, positively drunk with power, and she's so afraid of losing it.
It's got to be hard. I mean, not to interrupt, Brad, but in her defense, it's got to be hard to go from a year ago thinking, hey, we're going to get reelected. Everybody hates Donald Trump. I got another 4 years here, to thinking, wow, everybody's making fun of my husband and we have to leave this place.
Well, she talks about how he's sharper than he's ever been. It's like, if you remember that stupid thing where Joe Scarborough came on the Morning Joe that one morning and go, I don't care what you say. If you don't believe what I'm saying, FY, this is the sharpest, best Biden ever. And was it like 2 or 3 months later, he shows up at the debate and it's like, does he know where he's at? Look, I'm not making fun of older people. My father died. The day my father died, he was still as sharp as a tack. My mother, not so much. My mother had a lot of issues in her later years, and it was very sad to see a very sharp, well-educated, fiery woman just sort of melt into something you didn't even realize was there anymore. But the problem was, as my mother declined when my father was still alive, my father would point that out. My father would say to her sometimes, you don't know what you're talking about, and he would essentially point out the fact that she was saying goofy stuff and doing weird things and stuff like that, because they loved each other, okay? Now, Jill Biden, does she love this guy? I don't think so. I think she's so much in the limelight, and I mean, if you read this interview with the Washington Post, to me, it's disturbing. It's just plain outright disturbing. How can you be married to someone, see them in tremendous decline, and know now that there's all sorts of people coming out? There was the Wall Street Journal article that came out, what was right before Christmas, where they interviewed all these staffers, and they said, "Oh my God, he was terrible," and we there were days where he didn't really know where he was, and we're talking, today is the 16th, okay? We have the 17th, 18th, 19th, and part of the 20th, where this guy is still running the most powerful country in the world. Doesn't that bother you still a little bit, John, right now? I mean,
yeah, of course it does. But let's get back to Jill. So don't you think, if we could play psychologist for a minute, that she's so angry about her husband getting pushed out unceremoniously, and everybody, by every account, he was pushed out unceremoniously? Don't you think that she's going to double down on anything she said in the past about, he's fine, he was always fine, everybody pushed him out, he could have beaten Donald Trump, everybody knows that Kamala was going to lose?
Well,
like, what incentive does she have to be humble and say, you know what, things haven't gone well in the last year, Joe is getting a lot older, sometimes we're worried about him. She has no incentive to be that humble.
I hear what you're saying, and part of the interview talks about the fact that she's very upset with Nancy Pelosi. She said she's known Nancy Pelosi for 50 years, and we've all heard the stories that there was either a meeting or a call where Nancy Pelosi and the Chuck Schumers of the world, and I don't know who else was involved, maybe Barack Obama, essentially had a call to a come to Jesus meeting or phone call or Zoom or something with Biden and say, look, this isn't going to work. You're going to have to step aside. You need to step aside. And the story now is that as an FY to them, he says, I've decided to step aside, and it's now Kamala Harris. The idea being that
he would be the one that anoints Kamala.
Right. And the idea being that once he says that, the Democrats were like, okay, we can't go back on that because a number of different reasons, but primarily, A, she's a minority, and B, she's a woman. And the people would say to the Democrats, no, hold on a minute now. You're pushing aside a black Indian female because of the fact that you don't like minority women. You want a white guy to replace a white guy. I think that was don't you think that was the backlash that everybody was afraid of?
Exactly right. Yeah.
Right. So if you read the interview, it's just very sad. And the second thing on this is, we didn't talk about this earlier. My journalism thing kicked in. Have you seen the statistics of what's happening to the Washington Post?
No, you mean in terms of circulation?
Over the last, even on their online, on their electronic version, stuff like that, they've lost 90% of their readers. 90% of their subscribers are gone. And they said there was a big drop off after the Washington Post decided not to endorse a candidate. And once again, you and I talked about this during the elections. Endorsements, if John said I endorse candidate A, I'd go, I don't know about John. John has his preferences. I'm going to look at candidate B, and maybe I might like candidate B better. I'm not saying anything against you. I'm just saying, and I think the whole thing that maybe the political pundits have learned from the 2024 election is the celebrity endorsements don't mean squat. And I think to a certain extent, I'll still remember the fact that Oprah got up on stage, and remember that classic rant where she said, if you don't elect Kamala Harris, this may be the last election ever. Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's right. That's not hyperbole at all.
Yes. Thanks, Oprah. So in other words, you're saying that Trump's going to take over, and he's going to not have any elections, and he's going to put all his buddies in, and when he's in bad shape, he's going to put Don Jr. in, and then Eric Jr., and then he's going to put in his grandkids, and we're going to have like the ruling class of some third world country where, you know, the nepotism is out the wing-wang. So if you get a chance, to me, it's very spooky. And once again, I say, for those of you who are out there who are my friends, and maybe some people will say the call should be today, if I get to the point where I can't do it anymore, please tell me. And you know what? I will listen to you, and I won't go, well, I can. And the interesting thing is, she was asked point blank by the Washington Post reporter if he could do another 4 years, and she says absolutely positively. But wasn't it 2 weeks ago where when someone asked Biden if he could do another 4 years? Well, I don't know. I'm going to be 86. You know?
Yes, exactly.
Even he said he couldn't do another 4 years. Okay, enough of that. My Walter Scott story, okay? Should I give the background who Walter Scott is?
Yeah, briefly. We probably don't need to go into huge, excruciating detail.
There was a very famous band, very popular band in the St. Louis area called Bob Kuban and the In-Men. And Bob Kuban was an interesting guy. I believe he was a music teacher in Riverview Gardens School District. He used to live on North County off of Bell Fountain Road. Matter of fact, when I used to know exactly which houses was. He lived on Beard's Court up there in NoCo, south of Chambers, I believe it was. And he had a guy who was the singer for the band, whose name was... Now, you know, John, maybe I should step aside right now.
Walter Scott,
okay. And Walter Scott and Bob Kuban had a falling out, and Walter Scott left the band and started his own band and did okay, had some top 40 hits and stuff like that, and became like a big act around town. You'd see him at various venues. And Walter Scott ultimately disappeared. And apparently he was having some problems with his marriage, and nobody knew what happened for Walter Scott. Walter Scott just disappeared, okay? And Walter Scott's wife... after his disappearance, I think she started outwardly dating another guy. And it turned out...
I believe it began at the funeral, yeah.
Yes, it wasn't... He wasn't even in the ground yet, and she was...
Yeah, it's the old joke, a woman will bring a date to your funeral.
Right, and she was dating another guy. Okay, so long story made short, the other guy essentially committed the murder, but with the help of Walter Scott's wife. And I don't know how they killed him, but they threw him in
They staged a car accident and made it look as though Walter hit his head.
That's right. And you know what the crazy thing about it was? When I saw there was like a 60 Minutes or one of these crime shows that did this thing years ago, and the car accident happened right down the street from my old house. Because I saw...
Are you serious?
Oh, it was a heart attack because of the fact that when we first moved into the subdivision, get to our subdivision, you had to go over one-lane bridge. And they talked about, they staged this accident on a one-lane bridge. And they showed a picture, and right behind the one-lane bridge is the Central School, elementary school, which is where my kids went to school, which is right around the corner from my old house. Okay, so I'm thinking, my God, that happened right there. So long story made short, about 15 years ago, a friend of mine tells me this story that she was involved in this girls' club. And this is like a boomer thing, John, you know, where women get together and they have like lunch and stuff like that.
Book club, yeah.
A book club kind of thing. It's a boomer thing, right? And they were talking about this, that, and the other thing. And there were several women. She said there were probably a couple dozen women in this boomer club, you know, and they're talking about this, talking about that. And the Walter Scott murder came up. And they're talking about this and one and that, blah, 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 blah. And one of the ladies became very uncomfortable. It was Walter Scott's ex-wife, who had been in jail and served time because I think she got convicted of accessory to the murder. She didn't actually do the murder, but I think she helped hide the body or stuff like that. And she served, 10 years in jail or something like that. And she got out and she changed her name and nobody knew her background. And she comes out in the meeting and says, yes, I know all there is to know about that because that was me.
Yeah, I'm Joanne.
I'm Walter Scott.
And I just looked up. Let me interrupt, Brad. I was wrong. Walter Scott went missing. You were right. But the fake car accident was because Jim Williams killed his wife to be with Walter Scott's wife.
Was that the deal?
So the car accident was staged. Was Jim Williams' wife.
So he killed his wife and they killed her wife, wasn't it? Or
You're
her husband.
Exactly right. It was a double murder.
It's a double murder.
And they made the car accident, which you're familiar with. They made that look like that was Jim Williams' wife. So they got rid of 2 people so they could be together. And then they found you. And then the other part is, Brett, and I remember this because I just brought it up on the Wikipedia, is that Jim Williams, the murderer, he didn't get along with his son, and his son was in jail, and his son is probably pissed off because, his dad killed his mom. And he told the cops, look, I don't know, but if I was looking for a body, I'd look, we have a well and a cistern out back. I'd start there. And then the cops were like, really? Like, if you want to play the role of dunderheaded cop, we didn't notice that. Okay. And then they looked out there, and in one night they found the body.
Unbelievable story. But can you imagine as a woman being in this woman's group and you're talking about this case, and it turns out that the wife of Walter Scott, who was involved in the murder, is there in your home, and she's, breaking bread or whatever, drinking tea or slamming down, margaritas or whatever in the woman's group. And I'm going like, and I said to her, I said, what happened after that? She says, well, it got very tense. And there are several of the women that left and never came back to another meeting. And Walter Scott's, would you say her name was Joanne? Was that the name?
Yeah, Joanne, yeah.
And she never came back either. So how bizarre is that?
Oh, wait, pretty selfish of that woman to not keep her mouth shut. Why couldn't in other words, she brought down the book club. That's pretty selfish.
Yeah, she ruined the book club. Shame on her. I mean,
that's probably the worst. And she has now left us, apparently. Rest in peace. She died in 2019. It looks like everybody involved with this has gone up to the big Cuban man in the sky. Except for Bob Cuban, who is, as we know, 10 years your senior at 100.
Is he 100 now?
No, I just made that up. I have no idea.
Okay, what year did this happen? What year was the murder?
It was Walter Scott disappeared in 1983, but his body wasn't found until 1987.
Really?
And it was in St. Charles County.
Yes.
The cistern is in some neighborhood in St. Peters, I think.
I thought it was in Weldon Spring, but maybe not. Okay.
Well, you could be right. It's somewhere out there.
Yeah,
you could be right. You know that area better than I do.
Right. Is that bizarre or what? So he was gone for 4 years and nobody...
Yeah, nobody knew. Maybe people thought he went to Tahiti. Or that he was, performing internationally, or he was in China. They were going to use his voice for this technology they were working on called TikTok. It was crazy.
I knew women who melted for him. I mean, I knew
women. Are you serious?
Oh, I knew women who would follow him around to every concert he did. He played a lot. At the time, there were a lot of in North County. If you remember the old Hilton Hotel and stuff like that. Some of the hotels are gone. He would play like the ballrooms. He would be like with a featured. Not like necessarily like a lounge singer, but he would. I mean, I knew women that this is pre-internet that knew where he was every weekend, and they would go watch him. I'm telling you. I mean, he was like the heartthrob of many no-co women. And maybe a few guys as well too. I don't know. You never know. Yeah, but that was then.
Rest in peace.
Right.
And it's a shame that he I believe he was he got a proper burial. Now, what they were going to do, Brad, they were going to cremate him, but they didn't have access to your office last night, so they didn't have a fire.
Billy Joel came by, and anyway, that's a whole other story. Okay, you don't get that reference, do you?
I do. We didn't start the fire.
Okay, John, we are way over time. Say goodbye, John.
See you tomorrow.